Jasmine, step away from the table.
Hold on, let me back up
The
here.
guest credit cards you've been photographing and selling for the past 5 months.
This is Jasmine Adekunle, a front desk agent at one of Toronto's most prestigious hotels. The secret she has been keeping from 31 guests is about to catch up with her.
Wait, you said the what? Who are you again?
31 guest cards, downstream losses over $145,000.
I'm sorry, I am completely lost.
Within 72 hours, Toronto Police Service detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit would walk into the lobby of the Intercontinental Front Street with a sealed warrant, a forensic imaging kit, and a list of 31 names. Every name on the list belonged to a guest who had checked in at the same front desk, on the same shifts, in the same 5-month window. Every one of them had been bled. Purchases at online electronics retailers, prepaid Visa loads, courier-forwarded laptops to addresses in Scarborough and North York. Total downstream losses, when Visa Canada finished the cluster analysis, sat at 145,000 Canadian dollars. The woman in this footage is the reason. She just doesn't know they already have the camera angle that proves it. Before we keep going, when you hand your credit card over at a hotel check-in counter, do you actually watch what the clerk does with it? Be honest. Drop a yes or a no in the comments and tell me what city you're watching from. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, fix that now. We cover one of these cases every single week, and the next one will surprise you. Jasmine Olusola Adekunle was born in Lagos, Nigeria, in the spring of 1997. Her father, Olumide Adekunle, was a mid-level branch officer at a commercial bank in the Ikeja district. Her mother, Folak, taught grade 4 mathematics at a private Christian school 3 streets from the family's 2-bedroom flat. The Adekunles were not wealthy by Lagos standards, but they were stable. Generator on the balcony, school uniforms pressed every Sunday night, semolina and egusi soup on the table at 6. In the autumn of 2007, when Jasmine was 10 years old, the family emigrated to Canada under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. Olumide had cousins in Brampton who had been there since the late 90s, and the cousins had a basement to rent for the first 6 months. The Adekunles arrived at Pearson International on a Tuesday afternoon in October with 4 suitcases and a winter she did not yet understand how to dress for. She remembered, later, the smell of the airport carpet and the way her mother kept folding and unfolding the customs form. They settled first in Brampton, then moved east to Scarborough, when Olumide landed a position as a customer service representative at a downtown branch of TD Canada Trust. The job was a step down from his Lagos title, but it paid in Canadian dollars, and it came with benefits. Folak retrained as an early childhood educator at Centennial College and took a job at a daycare on Lawrence Avenue East. Jasmine went through Sir Robert L. Borden Business and Technical Institute, where her report cards came back with the same 2 words again and again: punctual and pleasant. She was, by every account from that period, an average student with above-average composure. Teachers wrote that she was reliable, that she presented well in front of the class, that she handled customer-facing simulations in the business program with poise. She graduated in 2015 with a 78 average and enrolled at Seneca College in the Hospitality and Tourism Diploma program. Her parents had wanted nursing. She had wanted since she was 13 years old, and her aunt had taken her to afternoon tea at the King Edward Hotel, to wear a tailored blazer behind a marble counter and call strangers by their last names. She was good at it. Her practicum at the Delta Toronto on Lower Simcoe was extended twice. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia Lemieux, wrote in her final evaluation that Jasmine had what the industry called front-of-house instinct. She remembered loyalty numbers. She remembered children's names. She remembered that the gentleman in 1407 wanted his globe and mail outside his door by 6:15, not 6:30. She graduated from Seneca in June of 2017 with a 3.4 GPA and a written reference from Patricia that called her verbatim a future assistant front office manager. The years between graduation and the Intercontinental were honest years. She worked the night audit at a Holiday Inn Express in Markham for 14 months. She moved to the Chelsea Hotel on Gerrard Street, the largest hotel in Canada at 1,590 rooms, and she ran the express check-in counter through 3 Christmas seasons and 1 royal visit. She was promoted twice. Her starting wage in 2017 was $16.25 an hour. By the spring of 2022, she was making $24.15 an hour, plus a quarterly service bonus that, in a good quarter, added another $900 to her check. In April of 2022, she applied for an opening at the Intercontinental Front Street. The Intercontinental was the building the Seneca instructors had walked her cohort through on a Tuesday morning in second year. 5-star, 299 rooms, conference space that hosted the Toronto International Film Festival roundtables, a porte cochere with a doorman in a top hat. She was hired 3 weeks later as a guest service agent on the day shift, starting at $26.90 an hour. She bought a navy blazer at the Hudson's Bay on Queen Street West, took a photograph of herself in it in her parents' hallway mirror, and sent the picture to her mother with a single line. "Mummy, look." Her first year at the Intercontinental was uneventful in the way that good years are. She picked up Saturday shifts. She covered the overnight twice when the audit clerk's wife went into labor. She learned the names of the regulars. The Calgary oil executive in Suite 2204, who came down every 4th Wednesday for board meetings. The production designer who block-booked floor 14 during TIFF. The elderly Boston couple who returned every June for their anniversary and tipped in American $100 bills. She was the one who remembered that the Boston couple wanted the kettle replaced with a French press every time without being asked. Her probation review in November 2022 came back with 3 lines of praise from her front office manager, a man named Devraj Singh, composed under pressure, exceptional recall, models the brand promise. Her 1-year review in April 2023 said the same things in different words. She was on the assistant supervisor track. She had every reason in the spring of 2023 to keep her head down and walk into a salaried position by the end of the following year. She didn't. A luxury hotel front desk is one of the most surveilled, audited, and PCI-compliant physical environments in modern Canadian retail. The Intercontinental Front Street operated on the Opera Cloud property management system, a globally deployed platform owned by Oracle that encrypted credit card data at the moment of entry. When a guest tapped a card on the reader or inserted it into the chip slot, the actual card number never appeared on the agent's screen. The agent saw a tokenized string, the last 4 digits, the cardholder name, and an authorization code. The full PAN, the expiry, the 3-digit CVV. None of it lived on the front desk computer. None of it lived on the receipt printer. None of it could be exported to a USB stick because the USB ports on every front desk terminal had been physically epoxied shut in 2019 after a corporate compliance audit. From the system side, the Intercontinental was a fortress. Every transaction was logged, time-stamped, and tied to the agent's individual login. Every refund over $200 required a duty manager override. Every void was flagged in a nightly report that crossed the desk of the Director of Finance at 8 the next morning. The hotel had passed its annual PCI DSS Level 1 assessment for 6 consecutive years. It carried cyber liability insurance through Aon with a $5 million limit. It had never had a confirmed breach. The weakness was not in the system. The weakness was in the second and a half between when a guest pulled a credit card out of their wallet and when they handed it across the marble counter to be tapped on the reader. In that second and a half, the card was visible: the front, the back, the embossed number, the cardholder name, the expiry, the 3-digit code on the signature strip. Visible to the agent, visible to the guest, visible to anyone with a clear line of sight to the counter. The hotel's surveillance cameras pointed down at the guest side of the counter. They were positioned to capture the guest's face for fraud disputes and to record altercations. There were 16 cameras in the lobby. 4 of them had clear coverage of the front desk. Every minute of every shift was recorded and stored for 90 days on a Milestone X-Protect server in a locked room on the 4th floor. The recordings were never reviewed unless an incident was filed. The phones were not searched. The phones were not regulated. Front desk agents were required to silence their personal phones during shifts, but they were permitted to keep them in a pocket or in the drawer beneath the counter for emergencies. A sick child at school, a parent in the hospital, a property management emergency from their own apartment. There was no rule that said a phone could not sit on the counter. There was no rule that said a phone camera could not be facing outward. There had never needed to be a rule because in 23 years of operation, no one had ever thought to write one. What citizens trust about a hotel check-in is not the encryption. They do not know about Opera Cloud. They do not know about tokenization. They have never read a PCI DSS standard. What they trust is the woman in the navy blazer behind the marble counter who calls them by their last name and asks if they had a smooth flight. That trust is the entire product the hotel sells. The room is incidental. The trust is what costs $440 a night. The trust was the breach. The first card was photographed on Tuesday, October 17, 2023, at 3:42 in the afternoon. The guest was a man named Jeffrey Halloran, a 58-year-old structural engineer from Calgary, in town for a 3-day conference at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. He handed her his Royal Bank Avion Visa Infinite. She tapped it on the reader, completed the pre-authorization for the room rate, plus incidentals, and handed it back to him with a smile and a key packet for room 1812. Jeffrey Halloran walked toward the elevator bank and did not look back. What he did not see, what he had no way of seeing, was her iPhone 13 Pro, propped against the base of the desk-side computer monitor on her side of the counter, angled down at 38 degrees, recording video continuously since the moment her shift had begun at 3 o'clock. The phone was set to airplane mode. The camera was set to 4K, 60 frames per second. The angle had been worked out the night before in her kitchen with a stack of cookbooks and a roll of masking tape. Later that evening, in her apartment on Sherbourne Street, she opened the video file, scrubbed to the 18-second window when Jeffrey Halloran's card had been visible, and froze the frame. The embossed number was legible. The expiry was legible. She rotated the phone, scrubbed forward another 4 seconds, and caught the back of the card when he had turned it over to verify the last 4 digits with her. The CVV was legible. She wrote the full set of details into a Notes app entry labeled simply by the room number. Then she deleted the video. The second card came 2 days later. The third, the following Saturday. By the end of October, she had 11 sets of card details written into 11 separate notes entries, each labeled by the room number, each accompanied by the guest's full name, and the expiry date, and the 3-digit security code. The buyer was a man she had met through a former co-worker from the Chelsea Hotel, a man who went by Tunde and who operated, through a series of intermediaries, a card fraud cell that serviced online retail purchases. The arrangement was simple. She sent him a card set via Signal. He paid her in cash between $200 and $400 Canadian dollars per card, depending on the credit limit and the cardholder profile. Corporate cards paid more. Personal Visa, Infinite cards paid more. Debit cards she did not bother with. He collected the cash from her in person every second Friday at a Tim Hortons on Wellesley Street East, in an unmarked envelope passed across the table during what looked, on the cafe's security cameras, like a conversation between two acquaintances about a mutual friend's wedding. The scheme escalated the way these schemes always escalate. In November, she photographed 7 cards. In December, she photographed 9. In January, slowed by the post-holiday lull in business travel, she photographed only 3, but she chose them carefully. A hedge fund analyst from Boston, a German auto executive in for the Toronto Auto Show, the CFO of a Vancouver mining company. She made $4,200 on those 3 cards alone. She was careful. The phone never came out of airplane mode during a shift. She deleted the video files within 12 hours of recording them. She used a separate notes folder, locked with Face ID and a 6-digit passcode. She paid for her groceries and her transit card in cash. She did not buy a new car. She did not move out of her 1-bedroom apartment. She kept her direct deposit going into her TD checking account exactly as it had since 2017, and she let the envelope cash accumulate in a Ziploc bag inside a winter boot in the back of her bedroom closet. Her lifestyle did not change. Her co-workers noticed nothing. Her supervisor, Devraj Singh, recommended her in February 2024 for a Front Office Excellence Award sponsored by the hotel's parent corporation. She did not win. She came in second, which her mother told her was nothing to be ashamed of, and which she agreed was nothing to be ashamed of. And the next afternoon, she photographed a MasterCard World Elite belonging to a woman from Halifax who was in town to bury her brother. No one noticed. No one checked. The phone sat on the desk every shift for 22 consecutive weeks. Quick question. If you worked next to someone for 2 years and you watched them every single shift, would you notice a phone propped on a desk? Sound off in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. We don't let these stories get buried by the hotel chains that want them quiet. The catalyst was not a guest. The catalyst was an algorithm. Visa Canada operates, in a building in North Toronto, a fraud detection unit that runs continuous cluster analysis on chargeback patterns across the entire Canadian cardholder base. The unit looks for what its analysts call common point of compromise, the shared location, transaction, or merchant that links a group of otherwise unrelated fraud claims. When a cluster crosses a statistical threshold, the unit opens a case file and forwards it, with supporting data, to the affected merchant and to the relevant police agency. On the morning of Monday, March 11th, 2024, an analyst named Priya Bhandari ran her usual weekly query against the previous 90 days of chargeback data filtered by the City of Toronto. The query returned a cluster of 23 unauthorized use claims, geographically scattered across 7 Canadian provinces and 2 American states, but with one common point of compromise: Every cardholder had stayed at the Intercontinental Toronto Front Street between October of 2023 and February of 2024. Every card had been first compromised within a maximum window of 14 days after the hotel stay. Every fraudulent purchase pattern matched the same downstream profile: online electronics retailers, prepaid Visa loads, courier-forwarded high-value goods. Priya Bhandari escalated the cluster to her supervisor at 11:47 that Monday morning. By Wednesday, it had been transmitted, with supporting transaction data, to the hotel's Director of Finance and to the Toronto Police Service Financial Crimes Unit. By Friday, two detectives, Detective Constable Yvonne Chamberlain and Detective Constable Marcus Idowu, were sitting in the office of the hotel's Director of Security, a former RCMP officer named Greg Powell, watching the cluster data on a laptop. The stays narrowed the suspect pool quickly. 23 guests, all of whom had checked in during a 5-month window. The hotel pulled the check-in logs from Opera Cloud. The logs listed every agent who had processed every transaction. Of the 18 guest service agents employed at the front desk during that window, only one had handled the check-in for every single one of the 23 compromised cardholders. Greg Powell already knew the name before he scrolled to it. He pulled the surveillance footage for a single shift, Saturday, February 10th, 2024, and watched the first 45 minutes. He saw what no one had bothered to look for in 5 months. He paused the footage at the 3-minute mark, zoomed in on the corner of the agent's monitor, and called the detectives over to his screen. The phone was visible, propped at a consistent angle, camera facing the guest side of the counter. From Friday afternoon to the following Tuesday, the Financial Crimes Unit ran a parallel review of every shift Jasmine Adekunle had worked since the start of October 2023. The phone appeared in 211 separate hours of footage. It appeared in some shifts propped against the base of the monitor. It appeared in others leaned against a coffee cup or a stack of registration cards. In every single shift, it appeared on the desk surface in the same general position, with the lens facing outward. The detectives identified, by cross-referencing the footage against the Opera Cloud check-in logs, an additional 8 cardholders whose stays fell within the surveillance window, but whose fraud claims had not yet been filed at the time of Priya Bhandari's initial query. The detectives contacted each of those 8 cardholders directly. 6 of them had, in the previous 2 weeks, noticed unauthorized charges and had begun the chargeback process with their issuing bank. 2 had not yet noticed. One of the 2, a retired schoolteacher from Saskatoon named Eleanor Mackey, had been bled for $7,400 over 3 days the previous month and had assumed when her card was declined at a Shoppers Drug Mart that there had been a glitch. The total count, when the cross-referencing was complete, sat at 31 cardholders. The total downstream fraud, as confirmed by the issuing banks and Visa Canada's chargeback ledger, came to $145,042 Canadian dollars. The detectives drafted a production order for Jasmine's Bell Mobility cellular records and a Section 487 search warrant for her apartment on Sherbourne Street. They sat on both until they had her in custody. They did not want her to know they were coming. The signal messages came later, after the phone was seized. They were not recoverable from Signal servers, but they were partially recoverable from the iCloud backup of an unrelated cooperating witness who had received forwarded screenshots. 3 of the messages read, in part, Jasmine, December 14th, 2023. Got a corporate Amex Centurion today, CFO, Vancouver Mining, no spending limit. Tunde, how quick can you send the back? Jasmine, already in your inbox, big one extra. There were 46 more messages in similar form across the 5-month window, recovered from various intermediary sources. The detective stopped reading after the first 10. They had what they needed. The smoking gun, in the end, was not the messages. It was not the Notes app on her iPhone. It was not even the $11,000 in cash that would later be recovered from the winter boot in her closet. The smoking gun was the phone, propped on the desk, recording in 211 hours of the hotel's own surveillance footage. It was Friday, March 22nd, 2024, 2:17 in the afternoon. Jasmine Adekunle was on the front desk with one other agent, a young man named Corey, who had been hired 6 weeks earlier and was still learning the property management system. The lobby was quiet. A couple from Munich had just checked in. She was processing the folio. She saw them before they reached the counter. 2 people in plain clothes, 1 woman, 1 man, walking in a deliberate way that did not match the rhythm of guests. The woman wore a charcoal blazer and held a leather portfolio against her hip. The man held nothing, which was somehow worse. Detective Constable Chamberlain reached the counter first. DC Chamberlain. Jasmine Adekunle? Jasmine. Yes, how can I help you? DC Chamberlain. Detective Constable Chamberlain, Toronto Police Service, Financial Crimes. This is Detective Constable Idowu. We need you to step away from the desk and come with us, please. She did not move. Her right hand stayed on the keyboard. The folio for the German couple was still open on the screen. Jasmine. I'm working. What is this regarding? DC Idowu. We'll explain in private. Step away from the workstation. Don't touch your phone. Her eyes went, involuntarily, to the corner of her monitor. The phone was there, propped, the lens facing outward. She had not taken it down. It had been in that position for the last 43 minutes. DC Chamberlain. Jasmine, step away from the desk. She stepped back. Corey, the new agent, was staring. He did not understand what was happening, but he understood that he was supposed to stop typing, so he stopped typing. DC Chamberlain. Jasmine Olusola Adekunle. You are under arrest for fraud over $5,000, identity theft, and trafficking in identity information. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel without delay. Do you understand? Jasmine. I want to call my mother. That was the only sentence she said in the lobby. Detective Idowu walked around the counter, retrieved the iPhone with a gloved hand, and placed it into an evidence bag. Detective Chamberlain placed Jasmine in handcuffs in the staff corridor behind reception, where no guest would see, because Greg Powell had asked them, as a favor to the property, to do it there. They walked her out through the staff entrance on Wellington Street at 2:31. The Munich couple, on the 18th floor by then, never knew. Jasmine Adekunle was held overnight at 51 Division and arraigned the following Monday at the Ontario Court of Justice on College Park. She was charged with 1 count of fraud over $5,000 under Section 380(1)(a) of the Criminal Code of Canada, 1 count of identity theft under Section 402.2, and 1 count of trafficking in identity information under Section 402.2.2. Bail was set at $25,000 with a surety. Her father, Olumide, signed as surety. He did not speak in the courtroom. He did not look at her as the bail conditions were read. The conditions required her to surrender her passport, to reside at her parents' home in Scarborough, to abstain from any use of personal electronic communication devices except a single court-approved phone, to have no contact with any current or former employee of the Intercontinental hotel chain, and to remain at least 500 meters from any hotel front desk in the city of Toronto. The Crown's disclosure package, served on her defense counsel the following month, ran to 1,741 pages. It included the 211 hours of surveillance footage, the Opera Cloud check-in logs, the Visa Canada cluster analysis, the forensic image of her iPhone, the recovered signal screenshots, and the witness statements of all 31 cardholders. 11 of the 31 had agreed to provide victim impact statements at sentencing, if it reached sentencing. One of those statements, written by Eleanor Mackey, the retired schoolteacher from Saskatoon, included the following paragraph, which was read into the record at a pre-trial motion the following autumn. I came to Toronto in February for my grandson's piano recital. I stayed 2 nights at a hotel I had saved for. The woman who checked me in was warm and kind. She asked me about my grandson. She remembered, when I came down the next morning, that I had told her about the recital. When I learned what she had done to me and to 30 other people who had also been warm to her, I cried for a day, not because of the money the bank gave back. I cried because I did not know anymore who to trust at a counter. I had trusted my whole life. I am 68 years old. I cannot start over on that. As of this episode's recording, Jasmine Adekunle's case remains at the pre-trial stage at the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. Crown Counsel has indicated, in correspondence with her defense team, that it will seek a sentence in the range of 3.5 to 5 years in federal custody if the matter proceeds to trial. Defense counsel has filed a notice of application for a Section 11B, charter remedy on grounds of delay, which the Crown has opposed. A resolution conference is scheduled for the spring. The hotel terminated her employment, effective the date of her arrest. The Intercontinental, following an internal review, issued a property-wide directive prohibiting personal mobile phones on any front desk surface, in any position, at any time, by any agent, with immediate effect. The directive was the first of its kind in the chain's North American operations. Within 60 days, 11 other Canadian luxury hotels had issued substantially identical policies. The industry has not, publicly, acknowledged why. Jasmine Adekunle now lives in her parents' basement in Scarborough, the same basement they rented from their cousins 17 years ago when they first arrived from Lagos. She has not worked since the arrest. Her bail surety remains in place. Her court-approved phone, a Nokia Flip from 2014, can make calls and receive texts. It cannot take photographs. The phone she used is in a Toronto Police Service evidence locker, in a sealed bag, labeled in black marker with a case number and a date. It is still in airplane mode. Its battery, by now, is long dead. This case was quiet, but the case on the right-hand side of your screen is the loudest one we have covered in months. Click it now.